Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Smith. We will begin our pre-meeting with the town branding presentation. You have the floor.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we are joined by our consultants from Haven Creative who have been working on this project with us. So at this time, I'm going to let them take it away. It's my pleasure to introduce Ian Redman from Haven Creative.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Thanks so much for letting us speak before you today. I know you all have seen some of me, but for the sake of the public, I'm just going to briefly reintroduce myself and Haven Creative. My name is Ian Redman. I am the Strategy Director at Haven. I, along with our entire company, work very closely with communities like Huntersville to do community branding projects like these. And what we're hoping to do today is walk you through the results not only of our work with town staff, but also show you the community input and conversations that we've been having over the past 6 months, 4 months, and walk through some of what we heard from the community and then how we translated that into the proposed branding. Later tonight, you do have an item on your agenda where you all have the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to adopt this town branding or send it back for revisions. And either in this part of the presentation or during that conversation, I'm happy to come up to the podium and answer any questions that you might have. So. As I mentioned, we are a full agency. We are located in Charlotte in South End. Our founder, who's there in the middle, Jenny Buchholz, started Haven 12 years ago. She's a Waxhaw resident, and we've been doing a lot of community branding work throughout the Charlotte region. I'm also joined tonight by Gemma Pisano, who's our creative design manager, who is really instrumental in this project, and then Jordan Butler, who is our account manager, kept all the trains running on time and making sure that everyone on Huntersville town staff had everything they needed for this project. I want to start with why we want to brand any town, why branding is so important for communities overall. As I mentioned, we've been doing this work for about 12 years. And when we work with those communities, we hear a lot of the same concerns and conversations from electeds, town staff, even the residents and community members in every project. And they kind of boil down to 3 key reasons why branding is so instrumental in any of these activities. The first one's all about building trust. When you have that identity that is well known not just among staff and electeds, but also among the residents, you know that when you're interacting with a town like Huntersville, you have clear expectations about what you're going to be able to accomplish, what you might hear, what some of those visions and hopes and aspirations are for the community overall. It also creates that consistent brand experience so that you're able to attract more economic opportunity. This is really about how you share that vision for your community, making sure that new businesses, existing businesses looking to grow, or entrepreneurs and other organizations looking for a place to call home know that your community exists and is a great place to make an investment in the future. And then finally, every community is unique in its own way and has something really special about it. We get the pleasure of uncovering what is special in every community. And what branding does is it allows us to protect and preserve that unique identity. So that's really a big part of this through signage, logos, storefronts, even down to what building codes are and how you allow things like brick facades or historic registry buildings and facades can really come down to branding and preserving what's unique. We've done a number of communities branding over the past several years. I have some examples on the slide in front of you. Most recently, we completed branding for the town of Pilot Mountain in North Carolina and the county of Rockbridge in Virginia. So if you want to see any of that work, you can do so on their websites or on our website as well. When we started this project back in September, one of the first questions that we always ask any community is, what is the goal of this project? Why did you decide to initiate a branding project? And we heard 3 things from town staff and our electeds when we had those initial conversations. And that was making sure that we had improved brand clarity, meaning that while Huntersville had a logo, the words that Huntersville was using to describe itself needed to be understood and well known by everyone. So making sure that both staff and residents are able to really speak to who Huntersville is and what it hopes to accomplish. Internally, on the staff side, it's all about buy-in and alignment. You have a growing staff, a growing community, making sure that everyone from your town manager all the way down to anyone working in the field in Parks and Rec or Public Works is using the same brand language, representing the brand on their clothing, making sure that you have that alignment across the board. And then finally, especially as a community is growing or changing, making sure that they feel buy-in and have that emotional connection to the community. Our goal in all of our community outreach and activation was to really understand what that emotional connection to Huntersville is and making sure that we capture that and celebrate that in our brand messaging. We did a number of activities that were intended to engage with Huntersville residents to understand what their concerns were. We started with competitor research. We looked at 5 different nearby or similar sized communities to understand how they were positioning themselves, what their branding was used for, such as economic development, tourism, or engaging with residents. We also conducted a trio of surveys, one for Huntersville staff, one for community leaders, and then one available to the general public. And we'll go through those results here in a slide or two. We did spend about half a day with staff leaders to really understand what the branding was for, what our key differentiators were as they saw them, some of the project goals behind this branding. And then we also spent time doing panel interviews. So we had a trio of panel opportunities. We met with 19 individuals. We also conducted one-on-one conversations as part of that with several community members. And then finally, we attended Halloween in Huntersville in a booth where we had the opportunity to speak directly to residents and community members that maybe didn't see some of our social media postings about the surveys or couldn't volunteer to join our panel interview. And we spoke to what we assume is about 250 people, children, young adults, parents, old people, however you want to call it, pretty much all walks of life in Huntersville. And then we've also spent a lot of time here. We've been to Huntersville for meetings and presentations, and our goal anytime we come to visit is to spend time doing what your residents and visitors do themselves. So we participated in trivia a couple months ago at 760 Craftworks and ate at some restaurants and really took time to engage with and understand why residents do things in Huntersville and why they choose to live here. For our surveys, we had 12 staff respondents, 19 community leaders, and then 381 community members respond. This was a really great community survey result. This is not a statistically weighted sample, so I can't say that this has a 5% margin of error like you would expect from a political poll. However, when we look at the overall population, not weighted or sampled for population, we think this is within about 5 to 10% margin of error. So you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. We are not statisticians or pollsters, but we do think this is really important feedback. One of the things that we like to do when we talk about branding is ask, what are the associations that you have with a community? When we say branding, a lot of people think logo or tagline, and really it's about the words that we use when the person sharing that brand narrative isn't in the room. When I say Las Vegas, many of you will think gambling. So we took that same exercise and asked residents of Huntersville what they think of Huntersville. Probably not a surprise, the number 1 answer was traffic, but the number 2 answer and the number 3 answer were family and home. Growing and community were also really prevalent, and you'll see a number of other words in that word cloud on the screen. We really spent a lot of time exploring what that feeling of home meant. It was actually overwhelmingly the largest piece of feedback we got at our community activation event. We had a couple of poster boards out where people could add what they loved most about Huntersville, what words they associated most with Huntersville, and home was the number 1. And if it wasn't directly the word home, it was the people in their lives that would probably make up the feeling of home. So it's really important to, drive that home, for lack of a better word, in the community branding that we're proposing tonight. Similarly, the quality of life in Huntersville and connection was really important. So looking at Not just things like where you can go to eat, but what the quality of the neighborhoods were, why people were choosing to live here. The future opportunities in Huntersville for young families and children was a really big piece of that as well. On the town facilities or asset side, Parks, Recreation, and Greenway won the day. Most people in our community activation, now they were in a park, at a Parks and Rec event, so there may be some bias there, but we heard a lot of really great things about Parks and Recreation and a lot of really strong love for the Greenway network here in Huntersville. It wasn't all positive, which I'm sure you're not surprised about. We had a lot of concerns about growth in traffic, especially in our community-wide survey, which was available online. As you saw, traffic was the predominant word. That was true not just in the community-wide survey, but also in the staff and the community leader survey, and a prevalent conversation in our panel interviews as well. When we took all of that research together, we built draft language that then went to your branding committee, which was made up of staff. And then we showed some of that to you in preview meetings. I know Ethan did that a few months ago. And we took all of your feedback, we made changes and updates, and we put it in what we call a brand book. This is a technical guide for how to use the town's branding. So this is primarily a document that your communications staff, Ethan and Pam, might use. It's also a document that any town vendors might use when they're doing things like vehicle wraps, apparel, things like signage. Even when you have your new town hall and you're getting ready to do things like furnish it or put in fixtures, this document would be a very useful tool for them as they look at colors, messaging, etc. We start in the brand book with the brand story. And this brand story is really the comprehensive narrative of what we heard from residents. I often say that our job as communicators is not to tell you what the community brand is, but to tell you what we heard. And this brand story really encapsulates what we heard from the community. The promise of Huntersville is best told by the people who call it home. You might encounter their friendly faces in a neighborhood park, along one of its greenways, or walking into a shop or restaurant. What you'll see is that Huntersville is a place for connectedness. No matter where you are in town, talk to a neighbor and you will understand that the quality of life found here is something not taken for granted. Talk to one of the many families and it's easy to see how bright the future is in Huntersville. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, you can thrive here. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but what this brand story is really meant to be is that entire kind of encapsulation of everything we heard and discovered in our process. Now, when we talk about brand story and how we use it at a really high level, you probably won't see this paragraph word for word in many places. You might see it on the website, maybe in a couple of like RFP documents, but this is really the foundational element of all the communications work that your staff is going to be doing moving forward. We also identified brand pillars. These are to a brand kind of what core values are to an organization. So these are the unmovable, unshakable elements that make up the brand. What we heard overwhelmingly from residents are best encapsulated in these three pillars. 4 connections. Huntersville is a place for quality of life, and Huntersville is a place for the future. What this really means is we're talking about the fact that Huntersville is a place for coming together, whether on the parks or the greenways or at the end of a driveway. Huntersville is built from the close connection of its neighbors and families. And I'm reading this word for word somewhat for the public as well as you. But for us, this brand pillar is really about the people and the opportunities to connect with people in Huntersville, whether that's families, neighbors, friends, maybe a business owner that you know and love that you like to go to on a Saturday morning. Huntersville is known for those opportunities you have to connect with others. Similarly, Huntersville is a place for quality of life. People choose Huntersville for many reasons, whether to raise a family, find an escape from the large city, or just be in the middle of everything in North Carolina. And we attract people here in Huntersville because of that quality of life. The lush greenways, the connected neighborhoods, opportunities to enjoy a place to eat or visit. This one's really about making sure that When you live here, you love it. You can thrive here. And we'll talk a little bit about that tagline. I know I keep teasing you about that. Finally, Huntersville is a place for the future. This is really that forward-looking vision for Huntersville. We're a community full of possibility and opportunity. This is exemplified by the many young families who've chosen to call the town home, drawn to the promise of a bright future for their children. While you don't have control over the schools, while you obviously have to work with community partners like the county and nearby communities, there's a lot of really great opportunities for families moving to Huntersville just right here in the community. And you, while working with partners, are able to continue that. I do think that when you look at brand pillars, these are both a reflection of where you've been, what you are today, and they're also a measuring stick for you on the council for how you want to move forward in the future. So if you choose to adopt these brand pillars and this branding overall, one of the ways that I recommend using brand pillars are as a measuring stick for major community events and initiatives. So if you were to say receive a proposal and you say, well, does this help us advance the quality of life for Huntersville? Or does this help us advance the future of Huntersville or improve the opportunity for those in the future? If the answer is, I don't know, then that's when you stop as a council and say, okay, is this living up to the community's branding? And that's just one of the ways that we look at brand pillars and how we actually implement them as leaders in a community. We also took the opportunity to clarify the personality of the brand. As people know, often when you're interacting with organizations, you are engaging with brands that have human-like qualities. You're never really engaging just with a corporation or an organization. We spent a lot of time talking to Huntersville residents and what they wanted that interaction with town staff to be. And it was really about feeling authentic and welcomed and cared for while not being coddled. And so what we have in here is guidelines for town staff and how to interact with residents, for communications teams on how to communicate online. And really it boils down to what we call the friendly caretaker. Carl Jung has a theory on brand archetypes that this is based off of. But really we've taken two of those ideas and combined them into one unique Huntersville personality. And it's really all about giving people the opportunity to thrive and taking care of them while giving them the opportunity to, have some ownership over their lives as well. We give some examples of what this sounds like in practice. So really leaning into sounding authentic and honest, understanding, being welcoming and friendly, while not being dismissive or condescending. Any sort of communication from town staff, your communications team is going to be looking, well, does this come across as arrogant or does this come across as exclusionary? And that's their measure of saying, okay, maybe we need to rework this or rethink this before we put this out to the public. And then we also have some sample brand language there for communication staff to use. Which brings me to the tagline. Taglines are always a lot of fun because they really encapsulate at a very high level what we've been talking about this entire time. The tagline we're proposing tonight is Thrive Here. What this really means is not a statement or a command, but an invitation. When we talk about thriving here, whether you are connecting with others, whether you're celebrating the quality of life, whether you're looking for the future, when you come to Huntersville, you have an opportunity to thrive here. When you walk the greenways or meet with a neighbor, you have the opportunity to thrive here. You can thrive here. In fact, people choose to live in Huntersville because they believe that they can thrive here. They've already made that choice. They've already made that calculation. What we're doing with this tagline is really just capturing what people already know. That when you live in Huntersville, when you open a business in Huntersville, when you come to visit this town, you can thrive here. And this is meant to be memorable. It's meant to be short to really capture that full spirit of everything. But this is really the summation of everything we've been talking about. One of the ways that you'll see this tagline be used is a little creatively by your communications team and town staff, where you might see things like marketing or advertising campaigns like businesses thrive here, families thrive here, and they talk about certain things or aspects of life in Huntersville to really get that message across and communicate that branding. So that's the brand message and strategy. I'm going to invite my colleague Gemma to talk about the style guide and brand identity because she is our resident designer and you don't want me touching any of that.
Thank you, Ian. Hello, as Ian said, my name is Gemma. I'm the creative design manager here at Haven, and I'm here to talk to you about Huntersville's brand identity. This is everything visually that Huntersville represents. On a personal note, I actually went to elementary school and middle school here in Huntersville, so I was very excited to be a part of this project. This was also a unique project for us at Haven because typically when we're working with governments, we're doing a full rebrand. So that's usually a new logo, several different versions of the logo. But with Huntersville, it was clear right away that the town knows and loves the logo. So we didn't want to lose that. We wanted to keep it, but we wanted to expand on it and give you another option that brings in this new brand messaging that Ian just spoke on. So with that, we're giving you a marketing logo. And this is that second logo down that has the tagline with it, "Thrive Here." As you can see, it still plays on that iconic Huntersville logo. We've just removed North Carolina and added "Thrive Here" in nice bold letters. We've got guidelines there on the left. We really like to make sure that everyone's on the same page as to when we should be using which logo. As kind of a summary of it all, basically the town logo can be used for government purposes, so any official town communications, and then we typically recommend the marketing logo for tourism campaigns, social media posts, anything where we really want to get that message across of, hey, we're Huntersville and you can thrive here. Another new element is an expanded color palette. With everything that we do at Haven, storytelling is really at the heart of it. And even when it comes to something as simple as colors, we love to tell a story with it. So as you can see here, we've kind of created this storyboard of pulling out the different colors and different iconic elements around Huntersville, from the red and the caboose in Veterans Park to the police color blue, and of course keeping that main dark green color that Huntersville is known for. These are some examples of just graphic style. These are just going to be social media posts. We like to include this to show how these new colors and the typography and the logo itself can work together to create a visual message. And this is a great way to make sure that everyone on the team is using the same elements and has a better understanding of how they all interact to get a message across, and making sure that we are having a unified look throughout. Here are some examples of branded merchandise. Again, a unique experience here in that Huntersville already has most of these things, but we did want to give you examples of how you can use that new marketing logo on different aspects, whether it's on a coffee cup, a water bottle, and then we've got a fun example here of a t-shirt and how we could use merchandise there to maybe give out t-shirts at a town event and really foster that community spirit throughout. And then lastly, here are some print examples of how letterhead can be used. And then as Ian was speaking to, this new tagline and how we can use it with different imagery. So images of families celebrating, family thrives here, businesses thrive here. It's a way that we can kind of pull in the visual elements and that new brand messaging to kind of create this new unified look for Huntersville. And that is it for me. Hand it back over to Ian. Thank you.
So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you all have the opportunity to consider and approve this branding tonight in your agenda. I wanted to quickly talk through what next steps would be if you chose to approve this branding, and just walk through what the remainder of our engagement with the town looks like. So once we get approval from council, we go into kind of our final deliverables section. So we provide every community we work with a comprehensive brand report. It includes everything we've talked about tonight, plus further detail in our community research. We include our competitor research, things like just kind of our overall findings and activities. We also include key elements from that brand guide to really explain the story of what brand work we've done. This is a really great document to release to the public because it explains to your community what kind of what went into the brand, what the arguments are in favor of some of this brand messaging, and kind of what we heard and learned from that conversation, as well as showcasing the roadmap for how you as a community can implement this brand successfully. So as part of that, we also give your communication staff implementation plans. So we include a brand launch plan, a one-year plan, and then what happens beyond year one. As Gemma mentioned, we're keeping the existing Huntersville logo and preserving that. So your implementation needs are a lot lower than a community who is starting from scratch with things like vehicle wraps, water tower, town signage, things like that. So that is a really nice thing about keeping and preserving that Huntersville logo. One of the other things, though, that we'll be giving your staff is a series of branded templates. And what the town has is 15 branded templates that Ethan and the communications team will kind of guide us on how we can help showcase this new brand through design to just support their work and town staff's work. After that, we're doing a branded video shoot. We have an outside partner that has worked with us in a number of different communities that town staff has already vetted, and we've begun the work on this. So we'll have that for release once the branding's approved and we finish that video work. We have a second day of shooting sometime here in the next few weeks, and then there'll be some editing time and revision time for that. And then after that, it's really handing over all these pieces to your town staff to begin that community brand implementation. And I know Ethan said he's going to bring to the retreat next week some ideas on what he might need or what they might like to see in implementation. But really the important thing here is that once you all approve it, it is imperative that everyone on the dais tonight is a brand champion. And so that's my final request, should you approve this branding tonight, that you really go to the community and help staff and help everyone share the story of Huntersville's brand and why you can thrive here. That's a really key part to this, is having those brand champions. Starts with staff, but then obviously as leaders in the community, you all have an outsized influence in its success. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or go into detail on anything else that you might be curious about.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I want to thank you guys for your community engagement. I'm fully aware of someone who was born and raised in Huntersville. He's 88 years old, and he participated in the old Huntersville to accept and bring in the new Huntersville. So that was very important. You said something that was very impressive, and it's not a political ploy for the dais, but twice you mentioned quality of life. You said it was in your research, it was high there, and also in the brand pillar, quality of life. Just a few weeks ago, I met a woman, which was called Davis Lake, and she moved to Huntersville because of the quality of life. And that one was because of our parks, and for her son to play soccer, and for our Discovery Place. Those are the two places that she mentioned. And when she mentioned the word quality of life, and you mentioned that tonight, it just made my antennas to go up.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, and great presentation. I really like how clear and concise in the examples that you gave. That was really helpful. My only question that I have is, I was wondering, in your experience, if municipalities and towns will typically adopt the same time that that the public presentation occurs, or if it's common to kind of give space between the two for public input as well. But how do, like in your experience, how does that typically work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in almost every case that we've done branding like this, we have presented and then it's been voted on that same night. At this point, we have already done a lot of that community engagement work. We had the 3 surveys. We were at Halloween in Huntersville. Everything that I've shown you tonight is not out of thin air. It's from what your residents and community members have shared back with us and what town staff has shared back with us, even from what they've heard kind of working in the town and all of that. What I will say is that, this brand is really the representation of town staff out to the community and out to prospective residents, out to prospective businesses and potential visitors. And so it's really important that, the community impact and voice is heard, and we believe that it has been. But it's also a point of, once you know it, it gets really easy to just say, yeah, this is it. And so that's, I guess, the task before you tonight. But I do believe that there has been a ton of community engagement, and we added that community activation event because we know how important community engagement is in Huntersville. That's not something we ordinarily do, but we thought it was important to gather that feedback, and frankly, we really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it, so we were glad we did it. But I feel really confident in the branding that I'm presenting to you tonight, and the fact that it is from the community, not just about the community.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We have about 16 minutes to the start of our meeting, so if anyone needs to take a break, now's your chance. Run.